welcome you to today's webinar, part 3, as I said, of our Empower Yourself series. Needless to say, we are living in extraordinary and interesting times. There has been, for all of us here, this unprecedented level of disruption. And I'm looking at organizations, both big and small, facing the unavoidable challenge of maintaining business continuity while, first and foremost, being mindful of the well-being of their employees. And here at New Horizons, we understand these concerns because we ourselves are facing them in real time along with you, as we all are. This is one of those unique moments in history where all of us are collectively experiencing the same thing at the same time. I'm going to call your attention to the lower left-hand corner of this particular slide that you're looking at right now. This is the mantra here at New Horizons: human first and technology second. And we really hope that this webinar series reflects that ideology, not just bringing you tips and tricks, but things that will make us all better humans, better neighbors, and better colleagues. Today's session is on leading change in a complex world, and our presenter is ERIN CAMBIER. ERIN is one of our finest New Horizons Center for Leadership and Development facilitators, and there she is, as well as a practicing executive and leadership coach. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce ERIN to all of you to take us through this webinar. ERIN, it's all yours.
Thank you, Kevin. I am really honored and excited to be here today talking about leading change in a complex world. And while I have facilitated this course for a long time for New Horizons, it's just perfect timing, and it's very much needed today. So it's just an honor for me to be here and talk about this topic with you and help us to really embrace the change that we're working through, not just now in the midst of this crisis, but also as we consistently go through corporate, business, and world changes. So Kevin mentioned, my name is ERIN CAMBIER. I am an executive leadership coach and a career coach, and I have, as we are doing today, facilitated online webinars. I also facilitate the full day sessions for New Horizons, excuse me. And for the past 20 years, I have helped managers and executives really focusing on helping their teams get to high performance and helping themselves achieve that level also, and navigate through transitions. Transitions can make us better. They can shape us to be better leaders, better humans. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So here's an overview of our content during our webinar. We're going to discuss and learn how to utilize critical skills in leading teams through change, and how to thrive as a leader in a volatile world. We're also going to discuss how to leverage some fundamental values to build a better workplace and develop an understanding of the change management cycle. So these are all relative topics, again, not only today, but also as we progress through this world crisis and as we think about our businesses, because they are always changing. If your organization is not changing, then it's probably not growing and it's not going to be successful in the long run. We have to be changing and evolving and shaping as individuals and as organizations to continue to get better. And I included a quote here from Einstein. You may have heard this before. In the middle of difficulty is where our opportunity lies. And as we think about right now, this season that we are going through in the world, this world crisis, it's very relevant also to the topic of what Einstein shared here. And I want to point out that in the middle of a crisis, or in the middle of a period of high change, again, where that opportunity is, there are typically two different kinds of people. There are people that are asking, when is this going to be over? How long is it going to last? Which honestly, we're all asking right now in this world crisis. But in general, that's one type of person. Or there's a second type of person that's a higher level thinking, that's thinking some of those first things, but also more specifically is asking themselves, how can I grow through this? While I'm in this, what can I learn? How can I make this change a stepping stone instead of a roadblock for me? So as we start to dig into some of these topics and the objectives, I really want you to think about making that shift to not just, how am I going to survive? When is this going to be over? But specifically, how can I become better through this change, through this crisis, through this situation or circumstance? The other thing I want to mention is keep the hat on of sometimes we can get so stuck in exactly what's happening in this moment and feel like that's everything and that will be everything. So keep in mind that this too shall pass, that I don't know when this is going to be over, but we need to keep that mindset of how am I going to get through today and this current situation, and also be looking at long term as well. So the topics as we go through today are relevant not just for today, but also think about how does this apply to my future team, future organization, as I continue to be that leader that thrives in change and leads a team successfully through change, because this will not be the first nor the last change that your organization will be going through, as you likely already know. So this slide talks about the need for a new type of leadership. And it says, our world of uncertainty is creating an unprecedented need for a new leadership identity. Now, ironically, the content in this slide was the same content even before this recent world crisis, and it's so relevant right now. But as we think about what that modern world looks like, what this uncertainty in our world, in our general day-to-day dynamics, that's things like a globally connected world, more flexible working relationships. We have more complex technology. We have shorter lifespans for technology. All of these things are great and they help move our businesses forward, but they also create a need for a new type of leadership to be able to get through those changes seamlessly and successfully. So I want you to start to think about what type of new leadership is needed to get through today's complexity. To get through not just today's complexity, but then also as our organization continues to change, continues to evolve, what type of leadership is needed and how can I shift my leadership to reflect that? This slide mentions the importance of leading by principles and values. This is really important to take a pause if you haven't and really think about what are the principles and values that I am going to lead by, and how can I make sure that my actions are reflective of those things. The more valuable that we become as leaders, the more valuable we become to our teams, to our families, and we help share that value so that they can also grow in that process. And as you're thinking about who am I, what my values are, there's some good little bullets there listed at the end. It's imperative for leaders to know who they are, where they're going, and why they're going there. Now, these things might seem a little bit obvious in terms of, oh, of course I know who I am. But I want you to really give that some thought is, who am I as a leader? What do I stand for? What is the big picture that I'm going for here? Is it that I know every task that my team is working on? Or is it that I have a successfully unified team who is working together towards a common goal? So really give that some thought. And part of the reason I'm saying this is because leaders always give the right perspective during periods of high change, and especially during periods of going through a crisis, whether that be a world crisis or a crisis for your organization. Leaders don't always have the answers. In fact, there's a lot of uncertainty even today. And if your organization has been through a significant change, you've already experienced those periods of uncertainty. Though it may have been a different uncertainty, you have been through that successfully. Good leaders, through even periods of uncertainty where they don't have the answers, they give hope. They share security, they give encouragement to their team because they're purposeful and they've decided this is the leader who I'm going to be, and I'm going to ensure that my actions are reflective of my values. So really giving that some thought is this slide continued. What are your priorities? And do your actions match those priorities? At the end of the day, every great leader knows whether you are in a crisis or significant change or not, it is all about the people. Who are you lifting up? Who are you pouring into? Who are you developing? What relationships are you forming? Because that's what's going to make you successful through periods of change and crisis, as well as when you're not in that. And then more to take that on a deeper level, I want you to really think about, are you willing to stand up for your values and priorities? Future leaders need to operate with vision and drive purpose. So in times of flux and transformation, will you be able to set direction? And if you feel like, I don't know, or or no, I don't know that I will be, then that's an opportunity. It's not an opportunity to beat ourselves up. It's an opportunity to focus on what do I need to do to get there? What do I need to do to be the leader who can set direction, who can drive vision and drive purpose? And start doing some self-reflection in that. A great thing to think about is that what are the skills of a successful leader who has helped me through change? We've all had a mentor, a coach, a leader who we have worked with or worked for that has given us that hope, given us that inspiration, and been that role model. So really think about what are the things that they exhibited, where are those gaps of areas of opportunity, and start to purposely work towards that even while we are going through that change right now. So leading through change, I've used some terms already talking about the intentionality or being purposeful as a leader. And this is really critical at all times, but especially in periods of change. We have to be purposeful in our leadership. We have to be thoughtful in our communication. We have to pour even more into our teams. We have to be authentic. We have to be flexible and adaptable. And we have to be able to adapt across lots of different situations. And we know already that in this current environment, it is literally changing by the day, even by the hour. Organizational directions, maybe situations at home with your family. The importance of being purposeful, authentic, and agile in that situation, whether we're at home or at work, is really critical in change. So here's a good list on this slide about how to thrive in change. We have to think about how am I able to serve the best interests of all? And I like to point out that serving the best interests of all doesn't mean that you have to treat everyone the same. That you can say, I'm treating my team fair and consistently, but that does not mean that we're treating them the same because we're all individuals. We all have unique needs. We all have diverse strengths, opportunities, things that we bring to the table. So as a leader, we are serving the best interests, but that does not mean we treat people the same, exactly the same, but it is fair. So get to know your team, what drives them, what motivates them, whether maybe they're working at home and this has only been going on for 2 weeks. Get to know them on a new level in that remote situation. We're going to talk more about that as we continue to go. But that second bullet, learn more about and value each individual. When we are in change, it is very common for us to go to controlling tasks or thinking about what can I control, and we can get very stuck in the details or stuck in the weeds. But actually, we need to keep our heads above that and focus on the connections. Encourage greater collaboration, because when we're in fear, most people tend to pull back. So your job as a leader is to not only reach out with your team, but encourage them to do the same. Build stronger personal connections and listen. Remember that they're not always looking to you to be the answer person. Many times they just want to know that you're there for them, that you're hearing their concerns, and that you're taking them forward and that you're bringing them together. So it's really important that you're talking or that you're listening more than you're talking sometimes in those, maybe that's in a meeting or maybe that's in a one-on-one conversation. Think about how much you are listening versus talking. So I wanted to dig in a bit on the term authenticity, and the previous slide talked about authentic leadership, and that is important. But it's also important to recognize that authentic leadership, while it's critical at all times, it's even more critical in periods of change. But we have to be building that from the beginning of our career as a leader. Our authenticity comes in our day-to-day actions. Now, if you feel like I've lost some of that early in my career, or I've lost some of that at some point, it doesn't mean you cannot get it back. We can make different choices today. The other thing to recognize is that authenticity for many of us can fall into an area that we take for granted, otherwise known as a blind spot, where we don't know how we are being perceived and that maybe our intentions are good. So we are saying yes to our entire team who is asking, can you help with this? Can you help with this? Yep, I want to help them. Yep, I want to be a leader who supports them. Yep, they said pour into my team. So I'm just saying yes, yes, yes. But what happens then if you say yes to everyone, You're only one person, and at the end of the day, probably some balls are going to have to be dropped because again, you're only one person. You cannot do it all. If you've said too many yeses and you drop some of those balls, what's going to be impacted is your authenticity, is going to be the trust level with your team. So it is so critical that you recognize the authentic leadership comes in your words and your actions, and it's not just in your intentions in your head. You may be intending, your heart may be, I'm putting my people first, but if your actions don't support that, if you're not able to sometimes say, you know what, I would love to help with that, but I think Tom is going to be a better fit. Or, you know, to honestly be able to say, I can't help with that today, but I'm happy to put that on the calendar next week. That's going to actually help you build authenticity. If you're not able to do that, it will hurt your authenticity with your teams. Your teams want authenticity more than they want perfection. They want you, genuine, transparent, honest, not perfect. Trust you, and it takes a long time to earn trust, as we know. It also takes a really short time to lose it. So recognize that, especially in a crisis, especially if your organization in the future is going through significant change, it is critical for them to know that you are an authentic leader that they can count on. So there's some good bullets in this slide of ways that you can do that. Put your people first, and I want to add, put your people first in your decisions and in your actions. And we have there, your actions have to stay, or your actions must support your words. So do the right thing. Be a truth teller always. That doesn't mean that you reveal confidential information if that's not what you're supposed to reveal, but it does mean that you're genuine and you're transparent and you tell the team, you know, when I know something that is important and I can share it, you will be the first to know, and then that you do it. And also that you stay connected to your team. It's so critical that they have access to you, especially now. Especially if they're new to working remotely, they need to know that they have a leader that supports them. They need to know they still have a team, that they are unified. So your most important role is specifically if you're new to that remote environment, is to build those connections right away. And it's to be in the crowd, be a part of the team, but be focused on the big picture. Keep your head above the situation so that you can really be bringing that together and helping the team see that big picture also. And then our values must be clear and we act in accordance with them. Remember that uncertainty is okay. You don't need to know all the answers. No one knows all the answers, especially right now. But your teams need to know that they can trust you, and authentic leadership is a critical part of that through change. So build a passion for excellence. When I think about the leaders that have helped me most successfully through change, they were not necessarily a cheerleader. They were not, you know, singing, you know, it's roses all the time, but they did inspire passion even through adversity. They were honest, and they helped me focus on not just getting through it, but inspiring, let's make the best of this situation. So they did pour hope into me, but they did that in an honest way. So how are you doing that for your teams? Crisis doesn't necessarily make us, it actually reveals us. Periods of change for our organization isn't when we decide, well, now I'm going to be a leader. It's actually when what is already inside of us comes out. So on this slide, we talk about organizations with highly engaged employees have visions that inspire excellence. So hopefully we were pouring into our teams already, but especially in periods of change, we need to operate with unity and vision. We need to create a culture of transparency. We need to open up those doors of feedback and encourage it. If people are scared and fearful, it's okay to talk about it and build those doors. Now create a safe environment, create the right time and share that, talk about when the right time is to talk about those fears and work through them. So do that in a healthy manner, but create that culture where we're all coming together. That's what a passion for excellence looks like. I want you to think about when we go through significant change, when we go through a crisis, when I talked about what comes out is already inside of us, it's the same thing as when anything else is stressed in life. So if you press down on a lemon, what comes out? Lemon juice. If you smash a grape, what comes out? Grape juice. So what is inside of us, positive or negative, is going to come out. Our choices make us, and high change or crisis reveal us. The more that we understand that, the more that we understand we have control over our choices. We may not have control over our circumstances. We don't have control over what's going on in the world right now. We don't know when this virus will have gone away, when we will have a vaccine. We don't know what's going to happen in our workplace. There are so many things out of our control right now. But in periods of significant change, it's more important than ever to be intentional about controlling what we can. And that's, first of all, our choices. Look at your self-care. If you're listening to this video a year from now because your organization is going through a downsizing or a merger or another significant change, the most important thing you can do is put your oxygen mask on you first. You need to take care of you. Pour positive words, outlook into yourself. Take time for yourself, whether that be meditation, quiet time daily, starting a gratitude journal, really being more intentional about what you are listening to and taking in so that what can come out can be positive, inspirational, realistic, not being disconnected to what's going on, but can be the right things to help build up your teams. If we get too caught up in that fear cycle, if I'm watching the news 24/7, I know that builds fear for me. And honestly, for most of us is going to, if we're just following what's in the media all the time. So we really have to be very selective about what we are taking in. I'm not saying don't watch the news, but I'm saying be selective, get the information you need to know, and then also be selective about other things that you're putting into your spirit. Just like steel is formed through fire, so are we. Leaders are formed through adversity. Challenges give us lessons. There can be no strength, no inner growth that comes without adversity in life. As I think about the things that I've grown the most in, it's always been because of something hard that I went through. It's a scientific fact that we can't have a rainbow without storm or rain. That doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge we're in a storm right now. It means that we acknowledge it and we choose our perspective and we choose how to get through that. And so what I want you to do is start to make some of those shifts into challenges lead to good things. They lead to wisdom that I'm going to gain. And as I'm intentional about what's going in to me as a leader, I'm also intentional then about what's coming out. Meaning if I'm going to lead, I cannot successfully lead my team if I am complaining, if I am sharing words that are filled with fear or other things. So really think about, what are you going to do with your time right now? I have a Post-it note next to my computer and I wrote, I'm making lemonade right now. Because sometimes it can feel like I've just been handed a bowl full of lemons and I'm trying to build a business, and lemons aren't necessarily going to help me build my business. But I'm going to choose to pour into my self-development right now. I can choose to pour into myself. Maybe that's writing a book or getting more exercise or spending more time with family or getting a certification. There's lots of things that we can do to make lemonade right now to build that passion for excellence both in yourselves and within your teams. So recognize that we cannot control our circumstances, but we can control our own actions and our choices of what's going on within that. All right, let's talk about technology and trust. We know that technology is a great tool to help us communicate and build relationships, but we have to recognize that technology is at best an enabler of communication. It is not a substitute for communication. We are all social by nature, so we need to utilize technology to help us build those social relationships. And what I want to encourage, especially if you are working remotely right now, you're listening to this not in your normal work environment, is that you utilize video. Because that last bullet, trust is built not by technical interaction, but by personal interactions. And the best way to do that is either face-to-face, or the second best is going to be video, where you can see someone's body language. You can sense if they say, you know, a word in a certain tone, or you can see their, you know, facial reactions, that we have to lean into this hard stuff. And even if you do not want to be on video and you know they don't want to be on video, you have to look at the core of what I need to do as a leader is to build relationships. I need to build trust. I need to help my team know that I care about them. So I'm going to model for them how to lean into hard things and how to make lemonade out of these lemons. And I'm going to start being the person that initiates the video conference calls rather than just pick up the phone, or worse yet, rather than just send an email. Phone is better than email, and video is always better. Even for casual conversations, you guys get your teams comfortable with that so that if you need to give a tough communication later, they're already comfortable with that uncomfortableness of being on video. But you've established that relationship so that you can see, hear, just really be able to utilize all of those senses in that communication. So a challenge for you is, how am I using technology to help build relationships and not as necessarily just a substitute for communication? So as we discussed, people are social by nature, and face-to-face or video is what builds trust. Now, we can't always get together. Not everything can happen via video call, every single interaction. Not every single topic needs to be face-to-face. But if you think about in an office, I interact with everybody on my team, you know, once a day. I would see them all face-to-face. Then I want you to consider, how can I see them all face-to-face once a day in this remote situation? Maybe that's not a realistic goal for you right now. Maybe that's something to work towards, but really think about, how can I be intentional working that into this current situation to be able to foster trust and maintain those relationships. And to that point of the last bullet, organizations designed to have a high degree of social interaction will exhibit more trust, and as a result, they will provide better service, they will have better, more satisfied customers, and they will be more profitable. So there are many things that business leaders are facing currently, as well as when we look at that consistent cycle of our business world. Change really is the new normal. We have constantly evolving technology. We have blurring borders in terms of globalization, increasing compliance, and our organizational structures are then pressured to evolve. Now, these are not necessarily bad things. It's important to recognize that actually constantly evolving technology, globalization, all these things actually make us better, but it cannot feel good sometimes in the moment. So what can be done is to control what we can control and recognize that change is normal. This world crisis is not necessarily normal, but it is also not the first time our world has been through it. So keeping focus, even if you just need a mantra of "this too shall pass," it gets me through today. It keeps me grounded. It also keeps me grounded in times where things are going amazing. I can remember this too shall pass because the pendulum always swings. I can't think everything is going to be great with family, home, work, life, all those situations always. This too shall pass keeps you grounded in all situations. So I've started to talk already about harnessing the power of change and turning that complexity and change into a positive by learning how to leverage it and how to harness the positive in that. Again, it doesn't mean that we're minimizing the seriousness of the situation that we're in, especially this world crisis. If your company is going through a downsizing, even outside of this world crisis, it does not take away from the loss that we are all experiencing. And it doesn't mean that we haven't experienced loss in this, but it does mean that we're going to choose to make that shift to recognize that loss, accept, and then make that shift towards utilizing this change to make us better. Change can create traction for us. Change not just can, but change does make us become laser focused. And another course that I facilitate is emotional intelligence. And you're going to get one quick snippet in that emotional intelligence is that our brains and bodies are wired to get laser focused when we are under stress. So many times change, a world crisis brings stress. We get laser focused on what is most important right now. What is the most important thing to me? And we very specifically move only towards that because our brains and bodies are wired that way. That actually helps us to do that successfully. And part of the reason it's wired that way is because when we lived in the age of saber-toothed tigers, we felt stress of this tiger chasing us. We had to get laser focused on surviving that moment. So that served us, and it served us well then, and does still serve us today, but we have to recognize what is a real fear that may or may not be driving us, and what are the right things that I want to get laser focused on. So get laser focused on your people. It says in there, leaders find a way to get people emotionally committed to change by understanding what drives them, motivating them, demonstrating trust. All of this is how can I pour into my people? This really should be your biggest and most important priority at all times, but especially in periods of significant change. Because the more that you do this, the more your teams will be able to move towards output, more towards result, more towards executing their tasks. But oftentimes we get stuck in the tasks. We get stuck in managing the details. Instead of focusing on the relationships, we focus on the output. And I want you to make that shift in the midst of change to people first, and then the output and results will come. Focus on what you can control. We have to be able to apply our intuition, as we know it's essential in a fast-paced, chaotic environment where there's periods of change. We have to be able to utilize our best judgment and follow our intuition. Deal with uncertainty and risk. One of the key things that's important here is delegation. It is important because you cannot be the only person on your team you should not be the only person on your team who can do a certain task, especially if it's a day-to-day task. If you have not already, this is the opportunity for you to start to actually delegate more tasks to empower others, open doors of communication. Letting go of tasks of output is actually the best way that you can gain control. It's the most powerful form of leadership, is empowering your team members. Developing your team first will give you mental capacity to be able to make those tough decisions that only you can make. To be able to have those judgment calls, that you'll have the time and mental capacity to make the best judgment calls and not feel rushed because you have to run a report or do some of those things that may be delegatable. So really think about, what can I let go of and trust my team with right now that can help develop them and free up my time to focus on what matters most. So as we think about sustaining change and creating a culture of sustaining change, we have to evaluate some of that fear and anxiety, maybe by utilizing some pilot groups. Have different teams potentially trying out different things so that we can evaluate how we're doing. We can get feedback from our staff. We can identify who is, really on board with this, and how can we convert some of those other people that are not as on board, or what we refer to in that slide as a non-believer. So here is an example of creating profound change. So use some pilot groups, stick to the ground rules, but be flexible and adaptable. Expect challenges. Anybody who's been through a successful change knows that it is not, we may have a plan, but it's not going to go exactly as we anticipate. And especially now in the midst of this world crisis, things are literally changing by the day. So we have to be adaptable in that process. Great leadership requires adaptability. A great leader knows that flexibility is a positive attribute. In fact, adjusting is a strength. It is a sign of a strong leader. It is not a weakness. I like to think of the example of a coach. A coach goes into the game, they have a plan for the game, they've ran through several circumstances, they have rehearsed it, but at halftime is when those great coaches stand out. Because good coaches all have a plan. Great coaches adjust that plan at halftime. And maybe that plan doesn't even include their plan A to E that they develop. Maybe they're going to, I'm pulling out plan Z here. Or, really bringing the team together. Great coaches are made at halftime. So we are in the midst of we're in the midst of the crisis. If you're in the midst of a change, you are at halftime. We have to consistently be able to adjust, try things out, and then come back and make adjustments as we go through this change. So there's 3 phases of change you may have heard of. William Bridges, in his book Managing Transitions, defined these as the ending, the neutral zone, and the beginning. The ending, just as it sounds, is that period of loss. It's important to acknowledge what we have lost in that, what we are continuing, maybe where there's continued loss in that. Mark the ending, give your teams the opportunity to go through that. It's similar to grief, actually. And I was just listening to a speaker the other day, and she said, we are all of us are experiencing loss. All of us are actually grieving. Now, our grief and the way we experience the loss is different. My loss may be different than someone else's, but we are all experiencing that. So it's important to recognize that, allow ourselves to work through that, not necessarily just stuff it away and say, I'm just going to think positive, that didn't happen, but experience those feelings and know that we have to do that to be able to get to the next phase, which is neutral. And neutral sounds, you know, just like that middle place, because it is. And neutral doesn't necessarily feel better than the loss, but it is a different place. It's where we're not necessarily moving into that new beginning, but we are in that place of kind of managing predictable anxiety. We're trying to manage the questions as they're coming up. We're creating short-term and long-term plans. We're adjusting. We're encouraging the new behaviors that we want to support to move us forward. So if your teams are collaborating well, talking amongst themselves, building relationships, encourage that. Help them to work through this stage and honestly help them to be comfortable in the neutral. It's okay for us. Yes, it's going to feel great to get to the new beginning, but we don't know when that's going to come. So it's okay to be adjusting. It's okay to feel the feelings that we're going through. I like to use metaphors to help us through all stages, but especially in the neutral stage, metaphors are helpful. Some metaphors that come to mind, especially about change, are transitioning from caterpillar to butterfly. And even sometimes asking your team's questions to get an understanding, metaphors are helpful. Something that someone said to me the other day when we were discussing, you know, kind of some things they're working through, and it was a leader who is, you know, everyone's looking to them right now, where our organization is going to go, what's next. And he said, I feel like the weight of the world is on me. And that's a great metaphor because that, you know, really gives us that visual. Now the entire weight of the world is not on him, but it can feel like that at times. So giving your team the opportunity to talk about that, and then the opportunity to recognize that and purposely move forward in what can we control, what can we do, is a really helpful tool in that. And then phase 3 is the new beginning. And this is where we need to remain open to changes to the change plan. So again, that flexibility and adaptability is a critical skill throughout this. Keeping communication open, creating and sustaining vision, clarifying roles, and bringing everyone together is going to then mark that new beginning. And when you think about significant periods of change that your organization has been through, you've likely been through this multiple times, whether you were aware or not, you have already. And it's just much more escalated, much more, the spotlight is on it in the midst of a world crisis. But as you look forward, you will continue to work through this. You will get to new beginning after this world crisis, and your organization will go through other changes. So remain focused on that big picture, remain focused on your team and sharing that hope right now, whether you're in that loss or neutral stage or going back and forth. And here's some important things as we think about, after getting through the crisis, some things that continue to face us as organizations. Cultures are evolving as we bring in more of a multi-generational workforce. More and more people are working remotely even now, but I think after this world crisis will also continue to happen, which requires us to be more flexible and adaptable, and also utilize technology in the best ways. In this new cultural reality, we have to recognize that we have to make some shifts to the way that we lead, the way that we do business, to our organizational culture, so that we can be more inclusive, so that we can build collaboration, even amidst feeling connected physically. Social distancing is not relational distancing. If you were here for the webinar on Monday, I talked about this during the Managing Remote Teams. Foster those relationships in this new cultural reality. The way to build way to build collaboration and creativity and inclusiveness is relationships. Couple of traps to avoid is remembering that there is no replacing the effectiveness of seeing someone's face as you talk. So yes, face-to-face is critical, but if you can't, if you're ordered to be in your home, the next best thing you can do is to have a video call. The cost of not creating a strong team identity based on trust and human interaction is far higher than the cost of buying a webcam. I'm going to put that in right now, or than the cost of my own pride of not wanting to be on video. There is much more significant loss for your team than there is the cost in some of those adjustments that we make in being on video. So I really encourage you to embrace that during this season. We also have to think about changing how our teams are managed. I'm going to the middle of this slide. I'll let you read through the rest. I'm going to pick up in leading through change. In leading through change, your role is to set up the conditions for your team, for new team types to exist. So we have to make the shift to management of the structure of the work, not necessarily the detail of the work. The second bullet, push the control and coordination of the work to the people responsible for executing it. So I talked about earlier, what are you delegating? And so I want you to take these two bullets, and these are actually good self-reflection questions. So shifting those to a self-reflection question to think about right now, how can I better create conditions for self-organizing teams to happen? How can I create better relationships amongst my team and their stakeholders? Those are two questions for the first bullet. The second bullet, have I given up control and coordination of the work to the people responsible for executing it? In other words, where is my time being spent? Am I spending time leading the structure, helping people be connected, or am I spending time in the details of the work and of the tasks? Leaders working to build sustainable organizations look for fresh ideas and new perspectives. Remember, our goal is to create engaged employees. And I'll let you read through those couple of bullets about highly engaged employees. Vision, adaptability, all those things are really critical. The new leadership is not necessarily do it because I said to do it. In change, in world crisis, we have to be adaptable. We have to be able to embrace and empower our employees. So if this is something that is new to you, focus on developing that. Read a book, attend an online live training, talk to a mentor, find resources. It doesn't mean that just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you cannot do it. It is your job to intentionally grow and create a growth plan for that. And there is no better time than right now to do that. So building a path to the future. Successful organizations in the future will have committed workforce, highly engaged employees, leadership that supports employees. They will do that in ways of coaching and mentoring, not in telling them, here's the tasks you need to do today and send me a list of everything you did, but in asking questions and getting to know who they are as a person and empowering them. And these organizations will also have purpose that resonates with their leadership, their management, and their staff. So I want to make sure we get time for questions. As we transition to that, if you're interested in going more in depth on this topic, we offer a full class. It's a 2-day course on this topic. I have seen significant transformation in the leaders who have attended this workshop, so I cannot say enough good things about it. We go way more in depth. It's actually a lot more of you interacting and collaborating rather than just listening to the instructor or myself, whoever is instructing, just speak to you. It's a very collaborative, interactive environment. We have been teaching virtual live training since 2001. New Horizons is, in my opinion, a leader in this, and the environment is top-notch for interaction. So I was skeptical, and I've taught training for many years in person. I was skeptical before I started doing it, but honestly, I love it, and I really, really encourage it. If you haven't done online live training, definitely check that out, whether that's with New Horizons or another company. But honestly, focusing on your professional development is something that you can do to help your team and yourself. So let's talk about questions.
Thank you so much, ERIN. give everyone a minute or two just to fill out any questions that they may have, just to echo what you were saying. If you're interested in any of the material that's been presented on this webinar, or if you have any questions regarding any of our available courses online, please contact your local center for further information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a zip code search for the center nearest you. They'll be able to connect you there. Also, Kevin mentioned earlier, you know, this webinar is part of our series for the week, the Empower Yourself series. So please visit newhorizons.com/empower to sign up for our last two that are ready tomorrow and Friday. Great sessions on collaboration and Microsoft Teams. If you're interested in any of the other webinars that we have scheduled in the future, just click on the webinars link on newhorizons.com just to view the full schedule and register for any upcoming sessions that we have. Another friendly reminder, this session was recorded. It will be sent out to you to view, pass on to any colleagues who may have missed it, or to share with anyone that you think that would benefit from this information. So please be on the lookout for that. And we'll just dive right into questions here. The first question is actually a really good one. The person says she works for a leader who portrays a lot of the characteristics, the positive characteristics that you were outlining earlier in the presentation. During the last 5 days, they've heard very little from her. How do they gently nudge her to remind her to do what she normally does well, reach out and communicate and offer some avenues for people who to connect and seek what they need? How do you remind, you know, managers and leaders that, like, hey, just because we're remote, don't stop doing what you've done well when you were in person?
Okay, I love this question because whoever asked it actually, in my opinion, answered their own question. Meaning, there's nothing more that is more motivating for us than to hear this is what you're good at doing, because what happens is we do it more. So I think reaching out to that leader and saying, you know, what we really appreciate about you, I love the way you help us feel connected. And, you know, even without, you wouldn't even necessarily need to say, you're not helping us feel connected right now, but you can say, you know, you have always been so intentional about helping us feel connected. And I don't think there's anything wrong also with asking your leader, how are you doing? How are you navigating this? How are you feeling about this? Sometimes as employees, we can feel intimidated that it may, you know, we think it's not my place to ask about how my leader is. That's what they're supposed to ask me. But really, I think we are all leaders. A leader is someone who has influence. So if you have influence, whether it be influence on your boss or your team, you're a leader. You may not write their performance review, but a leader is also going to ask them, you know, how are you doing? And is there anything I can do to help you feel more connected to us, or to help our team be more connected? Or what could I help with to help, you know, you are great at doing this in the office. I would love to help you create that environment for us remotely. Could I do anything to help with that? So just kind of offering some ideas and recognizing those good things will probably open up a conversation to create more, you know, more interaction, collaboration in that.
Great. Another question that came in is, as a team leader, how can the team trust be increased among the team members now that, you know, we're all working virtually and remote?
How can the trust be increased with the team trusting each other?
Yes, now that we're all remote, I mean, when you're in office, it's easy to just see one another and kind of just connect and be like, okay, on the same page. But now that you're remote, you're removed from that day-to-day interaction.
Yes. So the core of that for me is relationships. And so we're remote, so it's naturally going to make us feel isolated, especially if they're new to being remote. In fact, I probably talk to 3 or 4 people a day who say, I feel like I'm on an island. I've never worked remote before. This is crazy. It's weird. But building trust is the same thing as building unity and collaboration. So the more that you can bring them together, so utilize tools and technology to help them feel connected. If they've never done a webinar, if they've never done a Zoom call or there's lots of different technology, Skype, whatever that is, they've never done video, help them to embrace that and have, you know, maybe you want to just say, we're going to get together for lunch today. Grab your lunch, eat at your desk, or you know, at wherever you're working, and we're going to have a video call just to talk, because trust isn't built just through meetings. It's actually built through those interactions before, after, during, you know, all those day-to-day things, and asking your team, what are you doing to reach out to each other? How are you interacting? Another course that we offer is that managing remote and virtual teams. We go way more in depth on how to build team dynamics and specifically trust, but at the core of that really is relationships. So use technology to help them interact with each other and to help them interact with you. And I cannot emphasize the importance of, you know, video as a part of that enough.
Great. How do we find a balance between enabling others to lead team efforts and the mistakes that are made when we allow less experienced team members to do so on their own?
Ooh, that's also a good question. I love these questions, and if we were in a class, we would be collaborating and everybody's sharing, so it's kind of different for me to just say the answer, but I'm saying ERIN's answer. So my thought process is that if we create an environment where mistakes are not necessarily a bad thing, where mistakes are safe, that if we make a mistake and we learn from it, in fact, I have shared this with my team, like if you make a mistake and we learn from it and we all become better as a team, it's not a mistake because it's helped us grow, because not only are you never going to do that again, but none of us will, because we're all learning and we're all sharing, hey, this went wrong and here's what I did because I've already mitigated it or helped to fix that and resolve that. Now, that doesn't mean you just give up the reins and, you know, have the 5-year-old drive the truck into the ditch, but it does mean that you start to entrust them with things as they're building trust and you're building trust, and you're getting a comfort level for, you know, what they can handle based upon their knowledge and capacity. Then you continue to increase that as you go. There's no clear line on that. We have to, you know, judge that as a leader and continue to adapt. But really helping your teams to make that shift, that, you know, when something goes wrong, let's resolve it and then let's talk about it so that we can all learn in that process. And then hopefully that will also mitigate any impact, you know, to your team or customers. Again, just starting with baby steps as we're leaning into delegating.
Great. This is actually a very interesting question, especially given how everyone's gone remote. What if you do not have an option of a video conference? What else do you suggest that people use to keep the team together and engaged?
Okay, so I have 2 thoughts. My first thought is, why is it not an option, a video conference? And that almost every laptop today has a webcam built in, and if they don't have it, then we can buy them. And they can be purchased affordably. So maybe today we don't, but I would really encourage you to figure out how you could get there. So if that's off the table, there's no money, no laptops, I don't know, not an option, then the second best thing is going to be that, you know, verbal interaction on the phone. So individual phone calls, just calling to see how people are doing, having conference calls, and scheduling those things, because we are naturally going to be, when we're feeling remote, feeling on an island, we're probably going to pull back a little bit just as humans. So if I'm a leader, I know everybody's pulling back a little bit, so I'm actually going to reach out more, and I'm going to have them reach out more. I'm going to maybe schedule and say, I want you to call at least, you know, 3 colleagues every day and say hello. And there's also a ton of resources on Google, honestly, about how to build and develop team dynamics remotely. So create fun activities. Maybe have them, you know, just kind of do icebreakers. It's harder without video, but you can still do that on the phone too. When you get on the phone as a team, we're talking about, you know, what are you looking at right now in front of you, you know, and somebody says, well, it's, you know, a screaming baby, and whatever that is, like, we all, if we can not laugh but be able to find joy in our current circumstances, that unites us, that brings us together. Talking about the struggles that we're all having but still finding good within it is going to, you know, create more team unity and bring us together. So use instant message, use email, use phone, use a combination, just foster relationships over video or phone. Use email or instant message, you know, for some of those side, more task-focused things.
Great. Question here is, what should an employee do if you have a leader who does not try to engage employees, rarely gives the feedback, wants to send emails? What is your thought on that?
So that is also a great question. And what I want to encourage us as leaders, anyone listening to this right now, is what I mentioned earlier, that we are all leaders. You cannot change anyone around you. You can't change your boss. You can't change your team because you don't have control over them. All you have control over is you. So as a leader who wants to have influence, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to open up that communication. If your leader is always emailing and you're wishing, gosh, I wish they would have just called me, just pick up the phone and call them and start to foster that relationship and start to respond in that way. And hopefully that will be you continuing to open the door. Even if they are not the one leading that, you can still operate through influence and form a stronger relationship. More times than not, if someone hears your voice and doesn't just try to interpret your words in an email, it's going to be much more successful. You're going to feel more connected to them, and you'll actually get things accomplished faster. So I would just start by doing that, number one, with your boss. And then I would also start maybe sharing it with your boss of, I've started reaching out via phone or via video to several people because I'm trying to be more intentional about relationships. And I have to tell you, I feel like it's had a really positive benefit for me as an employee and for my team if you're, leading a team also. And so start sharing some of those wins. And again, hopefully you're influencing your leader or your colleagues to start to do the same. But know that if they don't, you're not going in with the agenda of, I'm going to change you. You're just sharing to hopefully influence them. But if not, you're still okay with that. You continue to do the best you can with what you have and what you can control, knowing we can't control other people. And I'm okay if they don't do things, if they don't know all the leadership areas that I know or that I've developed, it's okay. I'll just, give them grace, give myself grace, and keep being the best leader that I can be in this circumstance.
Great. Another great question. I know we're heading at the top of the hour, so if anyone needs to drop off, please feel free to. This is going to still be recorded. So another great question that is coming up is, what is a good way to address a peer leader change where a team member feels entitled? The person says, I want to remain an empowering leader, positive and on task with the changes we have been presented with, without disrupting the dynamics of the team.
Okay, so tell me who's feeling entitled. I just want to get clarity in that.
I guess it would be, so the question is, what is a good way to address a peer to leader change where a team member feels entitled? I guess someone who's on the team feels entitled. And it sounds like the person is in a leadership position where she wants to remain empowering and positive and on task with the changes. So I guess the question is, how do we address someone who feels entitled that's on the team?
Okay, so through change, sometimes that can be even more, a spotlight is brought to that, right? That they feel like I should be entitled to XYZ in this change. And I personally think that's, again, through relationship and through some one-on-one coaching or mentoring. And truly, if you start to dig into, what's going on for you, start to ask them questions. It's easier for us to spot when other people are feeling entitled than it is when we are ourselves. So that person likely does not have intentions of, acting or being entitled, whether they do or not. Asking questions to them of, how are you feeling? What's your concern right now? What's your biggest focus? How can I help you? Even if you're a peer, you are peer-to-peer, or if you're leading them, how can I help you through this change? What can I do to have a better relationship or to help us, get through this successfully? Many times you'll get to the core of what is driving our entitlement behaviors or entitlement attitude, and you'll be able to address that without even having to say, I feel like you're being entitled right now. But you can also keep digging in and saying, what we are all, honestly, none of us are entitled to even a job or a computer or any of those things. We're entitled to breath. We're alive. To this day, all we have is this moment. So if we really can get them shifted to that gratitude mindset, but you're not going to go from entitlement to gratitude. It's got to be ask questions, build a relationship, get to know them, what's going on at the core. And then likely what's driving those entitled behaviors will come, out as a result. Hopefully that answered the question.
Great. Another question. Yeah, that one, the person did clarify, and I She let me know I was asking it correctly. So thank you for that. Another question that came in is, what ideas do you have for leaders whose motivations wane? I guess they no longer feel motivated to lead.
So if the person who's asking this is that leader who's feeling just drained and not feeling motivated to even inspire others because they're not feeling hope or inspiration themselves, the best advice I have is to get back to your core, is to again put on that oxygen mask and don't even focus first on how can I inspire others. Focus first on how can I take best care of myself right now. How can I make sure I'm getting enough sleep, exercise? You know, when we're going through change, fear is very common. We can get drained physically and mentally. So getting exercise is actually really healthy for our mind and our mindset. So the more we start taking care of ourselves, doing those things that give us purpose as a person, the easier it is to start to feel like, okay, then I can step into, what is my purpose as a leader? Why do I do what I do? And getting clear on, okay, I am in a leadership role because I know that I can make an impact. I know that I can help others also, you know, get through this. And so it will become easier then to start to do some of those behaviors and to get control over what we can control, our actions. But by starting with our own mindset, our own thoughts, our own belief system first, will then allow us to be able to be more intentional in others, with others.
Great. Excuse me, great. Another question that came in, and then you kind of addressed this a little bit, but the person says she is a training and development coordinator for her organization, and obviously traditionally have done face-to-face training, and as we're all moving like the rest of the world to a virtual platform, besides some of the things that you've talked about, do you have any other tips and best practices for this transition?
Yes, good question. I'm trying to think of things that I've not already discussed because I don't want to be repetitive. But at the core of it is we just have to keep leading by example and leading into the hard stuff, and that there's going to be technology problems. In fact, our webinar on Monday, we had some latency issues with the technology, and rather than saying, nope, we're not going to do, you know, webcams anymore for the rest of the time, or having that throw us off, we just have to use that as, if I'm a trainer and facilitator, let's think about how can I model, even in the midst of adversity, how to handle, you know, when things go wrong. So if we can use our role as not just, you know, teaching and training, but also modeling, you know, to our staff, whether that be using new technology, you know, getting them comfortable. I think it's especially getting people to utilize video, do it in a super comfortable way. Maybe they just want to do that one-on-one. We're going to have one-on-one calls with everybody in their team so you can get comfortable using video. And that, or maybe that is easier for them to do with a whole team meeting, so that they know we're all doing this together. We're all in the same boat. We're all going to have technical issues. It's all right. We keep working through it. Just like it's all right if we make a mistake when we're in the same office. It's all right if things go wrong, but we're not going to let it derail us. We're going to let it, you know, make us better. So that's a couple of thoughts similar to what I've already shared, but kind of creating that dynamic.
No, that's awesome. So there's a question about how to get team members who like to isolate themselves to be more engaging. Now, I know that's a bit tougher to do when someone, you know, you're at the mercy of someone like clicking a button and engaging with you via video. But how do you get someone who's very introverted or isolating in that sense to participate and engage with the team?
Okay, this I like because it's a example of we all need something different. And there are people who are introverts, and so, you know, we joke like, oh, the introverts are like loving this this life right now. And I'm partially an introvert also, and I can appreciate that. So whether or not you're an introvert or extrovert, it's important to ask, you know, start asking your teams, what's the best way that we could communicate? And offering, you know, especially if you have video, I would like us to communicate regularly on video. My suggestion is, you know, this often. And if they are completely freaking out about it, you may need to baby step your way in. If they're an introvert who, you know, is not comfortable on video at all, maybe ask them, okay, what environment would make you most comfortable? Where could we start? Would that be with a one-on-one call? Would that be as a part of our team meeting? And tell them, remind them, I don't need you on video because I care about your background, I care about your face, your hair, anything. Actually, I want you on video because I care about our relationship, because it's important for me, and I know that we can foster that on the phone, but to me, I need to be able to see my team, and I need to be able to hear where you're coming from. So create clarity around their expectations and yours, ask them how we can best do that, and then also find out what they're working on, so that you're not necessarily, I'm talking about building relationships, but we still need to give them time to get their jobs done. So maybe creating focus blocks, or maybe having a scheduled office time where you are available for anybody that wants to reach out, or where you're reaching out to people via video or via phone call. Because sometimes we can assume somebody just doesn't want to communicate with me, but it's actually they're on the phone with someone else or in the middle of a project, and they're just not able to. So we have to be careful about assumptions, as we know. So just talk about that with your team, create different consistencies for your team, knowing you're helping them all grow. Some people embrace video right away, and others will, it will take a while. But honestly, the more they're encouraged to do it and you lead by example, the easier it will be for introverts or extroverts.
Great. Another question that came in is, how does this person who's attending, this webinar take these ideas that is being outlined and convey them to their managers or team leaders? What is the best way for someone to communicate that?
Great. Yes, good thought. Okay, so my very first initial thought is you'll get a copy of this recording, correct, Mayanne? They'll have this recording will be emailed?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So what I love if I'm operating through influence, I'll get an email like that and I'll just forward it on. I'll say, hey, I listened to this webinar the other day. I got some really great takeaways. I thought you might be interested. Because it was so impactful for me. So that's the number one thing I could think. Or, write down some notes. If you think, well, they won't listen to the whole hour, I really want to help, them learn X, Y, Z. Take some notes and say, I listened to this great webinar. New Horizons is awesome. Just teasing, but of course you should say that. I listened to this great webinar, and there's a couple things that really resonated with me, and I wanted to share with you because I thought they may impact you as well, or they may be helpful for you as well. So there's a couple different ideas.
Great. We do have a few more questions, but I know we're heading into the 15-minute mark of after the session's ended, but there's so many great questions. We can't really get to all of them. We have so many courses that address a lot of the questions that you have in the questions box. Please reach out to your local center and work with them to see what class is a good fit for you. Also work with Kara Flanagan from our Center of Leadership and Development. She is a great resource as well in getting you connected with the right center and the right course that can help you. With that said, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, ERIN, for your time. We always love having you present for us. Everyone, please stay healthy, stay safe. Human first, technology second, as we've been saying. So thank you again. You may now log off. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.